A recent study by CARP, Canada's Association for Older Canadians, found that 2/3 of CARP Action readers reported they had experienced ageism in the workplace. Stephen Hammond is a human rights expert, a lawyer, and workplace consultant who studies issues like ageism, sexism, racism, and gender bias. He wrote a couple of books on managing human rights, and it is my pleasure to welcome Stephen Hammond, one of Studio 4's infamous work gang, back to Studio 4 to tell us more. And the rest of the work gang isn't here, and it's not because they're too old.
No, it's not because they're too old.
No, they're too busy.
Yeah, exactly.
Perhaps. So, ageism. How do you describe it? What is it, really?
Well, it's just like any other ism. It's just where someone is being defined by their age or more appropriately discriminated by their age, so that we look at someone, we think because their age, either too old or too young, but we tend to think of as the older people, that someone just can't do a certain job or they're not up to the technology. But it's basically just the idea of discriminating against people who are older in most cases.
Or in the creative field, we watched the Oscars last night, a big stir about should Billy Crystal do this or not? Will he attract the 30-year-old viewer, or do we need somebody hipper, hipper, hipper? And what's wrong with just talented, 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 you ask? But
well, the thing that I was actually saying last night, we were talking about it, I was at a little gathering in which we had, we were all betting on who would win, whatever. I won, by the way, I got the most picks. And the thing is that I was just sort of thinking, do you think anyone just sort of thinks, okay, I'm actually going to sit at home and watch this, or sit with friends and watch this just because someone is younger? Maybe they will, I don't know, but I think it's going to be because it's entertaining or it's not.
Exactly.
And it either captures people's attention or it doesn't. But of course the interesting thing that we were talking about is Christopher Plummer, and how many people would sort of think, okay, it was his time, not that it was such a great performance. And I saw the movie, and it was a great performance.
Well, of course, but some of the pundits were saying, you know, it will be Plummer because he's 80.
Yeah.
Or they didn't come right out with 80, but you know, he's
82.
He's 82, and because he's old and he could plop tomorrow or something, so I'm sure he'll get the award. Not because he's a stellar actor. Have you ever seen Christopher Plummer give a bad performance in your whole life?
Well,
or Meryl Streep?
Well, no, of course. And the interesting thing is the fact that Meryl Streep had done so well because she played this aging woman, Margaret Thatcher, who's actually got dementia, but she just played it so wonderfully. She just played it so incredible.
Sure, and the gasp in the awards last night, Liz Taylor came up and everybody going, oh, Liz Taylor. Well, to me, rather Liz than Lindsay Lohan. So it shouldn't be about the age, but in the creative field it often is. How many old women do you see on television?
Yeah. Well, no.
How many old men do you see on television?
Yeah.
You know, anchoring or any of that.
Yeah. If you are a
by
Meryl
old,
Streep,
I mean 55.
Yeah. If you are a Meryl Streep, if you're a Glenn Close, then you're so exceptional that you can get those roles. But for a lot of other women, they can't, because of course they're looking for younger roles, and they're looking for younger women. Even when, and this isn't new, even when you've got the older guy and he's with a younger woman, that seems to be acceptable. But the other way around, then you got to come up with a show called Cougar Town, which I think is quite funny. But you know, you got to come up with a show called Cougar Town.
Sure, and it's more. I think females experience more ageism than males. Females become invisible at a certain age. Not all, but it is more of a problem for females. If you look at Canadian women in television, where are Leslie Stahls, our Barbara Walters, our Betty Whites?
Yeah. But you know what's interesting is, and not to take away from that, but there's lots of times where white, able-bodied, heterosexual men, for the very first time in their lives, they experience discrimination because of their age. And it's at that point, and not all of them get the aha moment, but it's at that point when someone is looking at you and just sees your age or just sees the wrinkles on your face, and that's where they perhaps go, now I get it. Now I get what women have gone through. Now I get what dark-skinned people have gone through, what gay and lesbian people have gone through. Unfortunately, it happens that late. But up until that point, many of us think, no one is going to judge me based on some other criteria. They're going to judge me based on my capabilities. And when you are judged based on something that has nothing to do with your capabilities, that's tough. That's tough to have.
I read a letter to the editor the other day. A man who had worked in the mining industry for 30 plus years lost his job, pretty much said, thanks, Sam, you're great, but goodbye. Then he tried to find work. And in spite of all of his credentials, he wasn't even getting callbacks.
No, and that's where if you have the exact same resume and you send it out with one age, well, sorry, you don't send out age, but what you do is you just change it, let's say, because of how many years of experience you got, or let's say when you got your degree, you move it up. If you do it for experimental reasons, you'll get a lot more people who are interested in you if you appear to be younger.
Right.
But of course, the thing is in Canada, that it was just announced on December of last year that the federal government is going to eliminate age discrimination. They're going to eliminate mandatory retirement at the federal level. So we now have, it'll take place on December 15th of 2012.
Right.
And so we now have every jurisdiction except New Brunswick that doesn't have age discrimination, that does not have mandatory retirement. And so that's a big shift for a lot of, in the last few years, it's a big shift for a lot of workplaces, because in the past, you maybe didn't have to deal with Stephen. You sort of thought, okay, he's 63 years old, maybe he's not performing as well. And by the way, that's ageism.
Well, what if he isn't?
Well, no, but if he isn't, how much are you contributing to that? How much are you not helping out Stephen, in which if someone was 35 or 40 or 45, you'd say, okay, Stephen, you need some help of some kind, or you need to change some directions. But if we just let people coast and we don't say, actually, you got to do a few things differently, then the Stephens or anyone else is going to buck up. And if they're not, you're going to find out. But in the past, you could wait till they retired. Now you can't do that, because of 65, he might want to keep on going till he's 70. And if you've got a non-performer, then you got to work with him.
Right. And the younger ones are saying, move over for me, all you boomers, move over because I want work. But I think there's room for everybody. I do. But say sitting on the bench, provincial court, Supreme Court, if there's no mandatory retirement, can you be a judge in Canada?
Well, actually,
until you're 104?
They still have, but theirs isn't the normal mandatory retirement of 65.
Right.
Theirs is 75.
That's right, because they go supernumerary and get that great, you know, if you go supernumerary, you work half and you get paid the same till you're 75. Isn't that how it works?
Well, no. You're a judge till 75. In Canada, you can stay on as a judge until 75.
Okay, right.
But you see, so far, they seem to say 75 is a reasonable time period. As a matter of fact, it's 10 years past what many people consider the normal retirement period. So you can do that. For pilots, for example, it was 60 years of age. Well, Air Canada just announced, in time with the changes that the federal government was coming up with, because they're under federal jurisdiction, Air Canada just announced that they too will allow pilots to be over the age of 60, but because you still have to be concerned about some issues about age. You know, when you're flying a plane, for example, they said as long as another pilot who's under 60 is also going to be in the cockpit. So if you can show that there's bona fide reasons, that there's legitimate reasons, then you can actually put some sort of age criteria on things.
Okay,
but,
and that makes sense. You don't want somebody flying your plane who doesn't see that well, or who has terrific heart problems and all of that.
Right.
So the physical part of it makes a difference, unless you have a co-pilot, then hope he can pick up the slack. It's like your doctor. You want a doctor who is young enough to be so hip and so current that they've done everything, but old enough to have had experience, so they've made mistakes along the way.
I want my doctors to be old enough to have made mistakes. I don't want the younger hip ones. No disrespect for the younger hip ones.
Well, you know what I mean, the latest and the greatest, but experience what is better, really, because we all make errors. Well, even probably our doctors.
I know the difficulty with setting just arbitrary time frames, like 65 or 60 or 75, the difficulty is it doesn't take into consideration what's really going on. Right. And that's what employers are now dealing with, is that employers now must deal with a person and his or her performance, whether she is 25, 45, or 67, is that you now must actually say, you know, are you keeping up to the standards that we want? And by the way, if it's a physical job, you're not going to expect the person who's 65 to be doing everything the person who's 25 is going to do. That's not fair, and it's not expected.
Right,
actually, it's not expected under our laws.
Not only that, if you've worked construction all your life, your knees hurt and your back hurts.
And for a lot of people,
you're ready to retire, and that's fine.
Exactly. Look, a lot of Canadians still want to retire, but I just saw that TD did economics did send out some information which indicated in the last 3 years there has been a net surplus of 75,000 jobs for people over the age of 65 in the retail industry. And so now that's that's not a big paying job. I think it was about $13 an hour is the average pay. And so you've got people coming back into the workforce. So there's certain places in which it's relatively easy. You might have been an accountant, you might have been a lawyer, you might have been a judge, and you decide, hey, you know, I still want to keep active even though I left that other job. Maybe I'll go into retail or do something else. They're finding that that's going on.
Well, apparently some seniors are working at the fast food restaurants.
Well, yes.
Like just bored. And if we live, life expectancy is longer now. So the boomers likely could live to 80, 90.
Stats Canada, I was just noticing Stats Canada says that by the age 2000, and I think it's 2041, they said that 27% of Canadians will be over the age of 65.
Right. Wow.
You know, so it's
and
it's
the medical
huge.
system can't afford us.
No, so there's a lot of people
That's the
who
other
are
part.
Yeah, a lot of people are going to be continuing to work, paying into the whole
Sure.
tax system,
Well,
and also making money themselves.
And sometimes it's not an option.
No.
You don't have the money to retire.
No.
You have the money to retire at 65 if you're dying at 70. But then somebody says, you know, you could live to be 92, and you think, gosh.
I don't have enough money for 92.
Be
I better
living
keep
in
working.
a shoe.
Yeah, yeah.
Like they suggested in the beginning, old woman in the shoe, because 92 is a long time to take care of yourself.
And keep in mind that this is taking a lot of people by storm. Here in Vancouver, one of the big firms is Fasken Martineau Dumoulin.
Yeah.
They actually had a challenge by one of their partners. He's now, I think, 67 or older. Mitch McCormick is his name. And he actually said, no, I'm not retiring at 65, even though what they consider was their ironclad contracts say that when you are an equity partner, so you don't get a salary, but you get, you get profits.
Sure.
When you are an equity partner, then you must go at age 65. He has challenged that. So far, he's won, but it's just on the grounds of saying that he's an employee. But it's even taking law firms by surprise.
Sure.
And so it's a challenge to a lot of people who said, no, if it's on paper, if you signed it, then it's legitimate. Well, the Charter and Human Rights overrides that stuff.
So more to come as the boomers age.
Yes.
More to come, because
Yes.
as you know, some are so ready to go at 60, or, you know, and others say, no, I want to work till I plop or drop.
I think I'm more in that category. I kind of like what I'm doing.
Yeah, I do too. And I mean, I don't want to fly the plane, but maybe. You never know.
Let me know if
Who
you're
knows?
flying my plane.
Yeah, believe me, you don't want to be
I'm taking
in the
off
back.
this afternoon.
No,
I don't want to see you in the
I'm in the front of the plane drinking the champagne, not that far front.
Of course you are.
Yeah, of course I am. I don't want to fly in the tail. No. Oh, nice to see you.
Good to see you again, Fanny.
Thank you, always. Stephen Hammond, he's a human rights educator and author, and of course a speaker.